Welcome to the Books, Beards, and Booze podcast, where we talk books, drink booze, and have beards. All right, here we are, Season 2 of the Books, Beards, Booze podcast. As always, I'm Bob of TalesbyBob.
And I'm Derek from the Troubadour Bar and Lounge.
Oh, nice. Being Season 2, some things are going to be changing around here. Nothing too dramatic. But from now on, every episode will feature news. At the start of every episode, we will tackle all the latest and greatest and anything to do with books, beards, and booze.
And if we can't think of anything, I'll make something up.
There we go. So for this week, let's dive in. Let's start with some beard news. Do you got anything?
Yeah, I've got some beard news. There was an article and viral video from this recently of an officer helping a homeless man shave his beard. And
I saw that.
That
was heartwarming.
Basically, what happened is an officer in, I think it was, Tallahassee, Florida, saw a homeless man struggling to shave. His razor was broken. And he came to the officer and asked him if he knew how to fix it. And the officer looked at it, tightened one of the screws for him, and then as the homeless man thanked him and went off to try and shave his beard, he realized he didn't have a mirror to use, so the officer offered to shave for him. So he stood there and shaved for him, and he was like, yeah, I appreciate this, because if I come back tomorrow, this McDonald's said that they might give me a job. So
yeah.
So and somebody happened to be driving by and stopped and rolled down their window and took a video of it.
Yeah, I saw that. That was almost my news.
Yeah,
that was heartwarming.
I had forgotten about it, even though I had just read about it earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And when I went and searched for beard news, that popped up. So I was like, oh well, I watched it earlier today, so let's go with that.
Yeah, I like it. My beard news is seamen in the Navy are starting a movement to allow them to have beards. Mostly this is stemming from the Navy just allowed a bunch of new regulations when it comes to women's hairstyles.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically they had this pretty restrictive types of hair, like women you can have X, Y, and Z. But for like African American women, they were having to spend a ton of money on some pretty, from what I was reading, like some pretty almost toxic hair care stuff.
And they were just trying to relax that.
So they relaxed it. Like, this is dumb. Like, here, ladies, here are now these hairstyles. Well, so there was a very specific reason for that.
Right.
But now guys are like, well, man, fuck that. I want to have a beard. And but backing that up, first off, I read apparently they were able to have beards until the 80s. The 80s is when that changed in the Navy. I don't know about
just in the Navy. I would assume.
Yeah, just in the Navy.
I didn't know anything.
There's there's a tradition of bearded sailors, but then also they've recently, and this is pretty much across the armed forces, I think they've updated their tattoo policy. Used to you could pretty much only have tattoos on the upper part of your arms.
Right.
They've pretty much now relaxed. You can even have neck tattoos. You can have full sleeves, whatever. So guys are like, look, if I can have a neck tattoo, I should be able to have a beard.
And they're like, we can't argue with that.
Yeah, so it's the start of a movement. We'll see if anything comes of it. And there's some people doing it in the Army as well, but they don't really have the tradition of beards quite like it. Although, I know a year or two ago, they've made an acceptance, they've always made an exemption for Sikh Sikhs that are in the armed forces, but they made an exception for a guy who says that he worships Thor. So they made an exemption.
Who doesn't worship Thor?
Right? It's just safest that way.
Let's be real here. It's Chris Hemsworth. It's pretty awesome.
He's a sexy man.
That actually transitions into one of my other news articles, if you don't mind.
Dive in.
Okay. Part of my book news for the week is the Navy has come out with an e-reader.
Specific for them?
Specific for them.
Like a Kindle Fire, but it's
called the Nerd, the Navy e-reader device.
This is 100% with me?
No, here's why. They came up with it. They specifically designed it to be used in submarines. And for security purposes, you can't just have a normal one down there.
Wow.
So they were like, well, part of the thing that helps people get through those long, especially in submarines, is they need books. But books are heavy and they're hard to come by. So they're like, well, what can we do? So they made the Navy their own e-readers, and they're called the Nerds. They're secure e-readers that can be used in submarines that have no external things, like there's no Wi-Fi or anything like that. So there's no way for any possible interference with their electronics and stuff like that. They cost like $3,000 per device. There's roughly 5 of them on each submarine.
Yeah.
And there's a huge waiting list.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like 5 people per.
Yeah.
And then apparently it's a huge hit, and it can be filled with up to 300 books, and they've got things like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And basically, they came up with a list of the most widely varied and a little bit of
everything.
Right. And threw everything on there. And since it was such a big hit with that, they've now started making them for every other battle cruiser and stuff like that on the Navy, because they have similar issues.
Okay.
So
I like it.
The Nerd.
Yeah, the Nerd. The name is amazing.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until I wrote it down.
Here's an interesting bit of trivia. The armed forces have their approved reading list, like they have a suggested reading list kind of deal. There's only one sci-fi novel on there. Do you want to take a guess?
Starship Troopers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Starship Troopers. And it's not on every armed forces. I think it's only on the Air Force. But the Air Force has Starship Troopers as a suggested reading.
There was a specific sci-fi book on this list that I remember going, Ender's Game. Ender's Game's on there. On the e-readers.
My tiny free library that I do every week, I just found a copy of Ender's Game. It's sitting in there. And I had because of Maxwell being in Montgomery, there's so, downtown, around lunchtime when I'm there, there's so many military walking around. And this Air Force guy was stopped and was looking, Ender's Game, I fucking love that. It's like,
great book.
He's like, you can take it, man. He's like, I already got it. Like,
I have 2 copies of it myself.
Yeah. So, that's cool. Do you have other book news?
No, my other 2 are...
I have one little piece of book news and then one slightly bigger piece of book news. My little piece of book news, Ravnica is coming to D&D. The Ravnica is, for those who don't know, is a setting for Magic, the Gathering, and it was my favorite.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was. I loved it. I've got rid of my Magic cards. The only 2 decks I have left are both from Ravnica.
Okay.
Loved Ravnica. Anyway, so it's getting a full release. It's getting a print copy book. Also, they finally released a book for Eberron, but I think it says PDF only. But my bigger news, and this affected me in a real way. So, turns out that combined print and digital book sales in the genres of science fiction and fantasy have doubled since 2010. This is according to data from the publishing industry analysis blog Author Earnings. Everyone had been thinking that it had plummeted, that it was not doing great. But what they did, they gave a presentation in May of 2018 at the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America's 52nd Annual Nebula Conference. Say that 3 times fast. But it looks at new data covering 2017 book sales from a bunch of different sources, such as NPD PubTrack, NPD Bookscan, and Amazon Book Sales. Basically, I think it was Nielsen was not using those to track. And so what these people have done is figured out from 2010, 2010, sci-fi fantasy had a huge drop in sales because, just life, yada, yada,
There's so many different things for people to do now.
Well, it also was that was during the recession and yada, yada, yada. But actually, it's basically recovered and has doubled since 2010. So that was really cool. Why that affects me in a real way was I found that article. I was like, you know what? I wonder if the fantasy subreddit is seeing this. And I shared it. Mother of God. I got, a normal thing I post on there, the best one I've ever posted was, I think, I did a slash books post that got, 30 upvotes. I got, 700 upvotes. But really cool, I just mentioned, I shared the link, and I'm, as someone who's trying to break into the industry, this warms my heart to see. And someone asked, what are you working on? And I told them, I've got 2 fantasy novels written that are first drafts, and I got a second draft done of a horror novel set in Montgomery, and I was this week I will finish a horror novel about a redneck wizard. And people were like, what the fuck? I'm all in on that. Like, I had people offering to alpha
that
read
was
it.
like one of your best ideas.
Michael J. Sullivan, the guy who wrote Raya Revelations, and
which I started listening to again this week.
He commented and like wished me luck, and like oh god, I jizzed in my pants a little bit. I told him like, dude, I just got done listening to those on audiobook. It's fucking great. Like, you saying this made my week, and he was like, yeah, good man, I'm glad. Thanks for the support. Good luck. So yeah, that tickled my pickle. So since you have two things of booze news, how about you start us off?
Yeah, sure. I'll do both of mine.
Okay.
Because one of them is really short, and it's just that whiskey groups have united to urge free trade across the world. Groups representing Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, and then Japanese, European, and Canadian spirits in general have met in Louisville, Kentucky, to discuss a united effort to encourage free trade. And basically, as soon as they got there, the announcement of
the EU
and the U.S. Tariff reductions or whatever the trade agreement came through. So they already were like, okay, cool. We probably they were very encouraged by that, but they're already there, so they're still talking about how to take care of it.
Nothing but good. Like that. Nothing but good.
But that was the first one of those.
Yeah,
and this is my favorite of the week. My favorite article. That I just kind of stumbled across. I don't even know how I found it. I really don't even remember how I found it. But it's Sierra Norte makes Mexican whiskey from heirloom corn.
Okay.
A guy named Doug French became a distiller in Mexico selling mezcal. But when there was a shortage in the ingredient needed to make it, he had to close down. So he had 15 employees that worked there that were all women. Most of them mothers. So he was like, okay, I got to figure something out. I can't just leave these people with nothing to do. So he found out that Oaxaca, which is the place where I think is where he's based in, claims to be the origin of corn. It still grows heritage corn of pretty much every single color.
Okay.
So we started testing making whiskeys with those different corns, and immediately discovered that if he keeps them separate, the different colors have different tastes.
Mm-hmm.
So he started testing them, and instead of coming up with one recipe, he came up with 3. Immediately. Okay. The yellow, the black, and the white. The yellow corn has a buttery nose, a roast fruit on the tongue, and a honey-like finish.
Okay. The
black has a cherry nose, plantain on the tongue, and almond vanilla finish.
I have a funny story about plantains. That's not fit for air.
No, it's not. And
shout out to Superfan Tony on that.
Yeah. And white, which is vanilla and almond in the nose, green apple on the tongue, and cinnamon on the finish. All of these I desperately want to try.
I would be really intrigued to try the white.
Specifically? That was the one I was...
I'm not big on cinnamon, but like a cinnamon finish... I think I could get behind.
I think it probably would be kind of masked by the general burn of whiskey anyways. So I don't know that you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But anyways,
that's the one that tickles my.
But the thing is, those got really good grades from people testing them, and they were only aged for 6 to 8 months.
Really?
Yeah. So he's trying, and he's also trying to make. He's making 3 new recipes right now for red, purple, and green corn.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah. So that brings me to I just had this thought, pitching this to the audience. I feel like our crowd is more like most people coming to this are more coming for the books side of things. And some folks have beards, but then some people do like to drink. But I feel like they're mostly like people like us. Like, we like to drink and we know a little bit, but we don't know a lot.
No.
Like, would the people out there like us to do like a bonus episode where we kind of talk about how like some of these liquors are made, maybe? Like some more like behind the scenes kind of stuff. Just let us know. You can shoot us an email.
I've considered learning about how to break down the taste of liquor and beer and stuff like that.
Like,
so that
if you would like a more like booze-centered bonus podcast on occasion, just shoot us an email or a comment and let us know. But yeah, so my bit of booze news, you'll like this, having lived in Germany. Germany is about to run out of beer bottles. So the problem is that Germans don't drink out of cans. They say fuck that. So the system is basically that you pay a deposit on bottles that gets refunded when you bring them back. But they're having a heat wave. And it's so hot that folks are saying fuck it and not bringing the bottles back. Like they will eventually, but just for right now, they're like, it's too hot. I'm not doing it. So the problem is, further problem, is they order their bottles a year in advance. So you can't just go buy another pallet of bottles.
Yeah.
So they are like, the German beer producers are like begging people, like, please, dear God, bring your bottles back or we are going to run out. In a much smaller bit of related news, a London beer producer had to limit what it's selling because there's a lack of CO2. There's due to like plant upgrades and a bunch of plants going down for maintenance. Right now, there are only 5 plants in the EU that produce CO2, and only one of them is in England. So there's a shortage of CO2. So that's fucking up a lot of people on their on what they've got to brew with. So. Yeah, neat.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So that's our news. And I think that, yeah, that's all I got. You got anything else?
Nope, that was all my news.
All right, cool. All right. So, did you like that little harmonica break? Yeah, we haven't quite fine-tuned the whole recording process. We're recording this the old way.
I think we've got it. I think
we're getting there. We're getting closer.
I think the new mic or the addition with different nights. I think that'll do it. I think that'll do the trick.
Okay, so we're going to keep experimenting with it. We had to come back to record it the old way so we could get this out to you on time. But we got these little bits of intro music, we're trying to step it up a little bit.
Check us out on YouTube.
Yeah, we're now on YouTube. Yeah, everything now goes to YouTube, so be sure to check that out. So normally, we decided that we were going to set this half of the podcast aside to talking about what we're going to be doing going forward with season 2 and the show overall. So first thing, we listened to the comments coming in, and we've decided that from now on, our short read tall glass episodes are going to be every other week. That gives you 2 weeks to read the story, which the story right now is an N.K. Jemisin story. The link is on the blog. And so every 2 weeks, there will be short read tall glass where we are going to sample a regional beer or liquor and read, go over and discuss some sort of fantasy short story. That's another thing. We've decided to narrow our focus to what we know best, and that's genre fiction. Whether it's going to be sci-fi, fantasy, or horror, we're going to try and keep it more closely related to that field, just because it's what we know best. Does that mean that we won't ever do, some more mainstream fiction? No, of course not.
I hope not, because I like that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but our primary focus is kind of the decision-making process that went behind that is people who really enjoy genre fiction tend to also enjoy mainstream fiction, but there are a lot of people who only enjoy mainstream fiction. They tend to have a negative connotation for genre fiction, I feel like, a lot of the time. So we're going to focus, but it's one of those deals, like, we don't want to lure in a bunch of people thinking, oh, well, I'm going to get a Nabokov story every week, and then they get super salty and pissy because, well, no, we're doing a Sanderson story this week. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Another thing, though, and if you listen to our Season 1 recap, this is something that we talked about on there. We are definitely open to covering smaller names in fiction. We're not trying to get a Stephen King and a Brandon Sanderson and a Nabokov every week or every 2 weeks. Like, if you are a self-published author, an indie author, if you're a small press, reach out to us. Like, just because you submit a story doesn't mean that we're going to fucking do it. I mean, if your story's trash, your story's trash. And like, I'm somewhat forgiving, but Derek is not. So Derek will keep me honest on this one. And so it's one of those deals like, but we do want to support smaller authors. You know, we want to give a voice to everyone, not just the big names.
Because they already get a lot of attention.
They do.
It'd be nice to be able to do that so that we can give a nuanced take. Because, like Bob said, he has a tendency sometimes to go a little soft and I go a little hard. But the fact is, it would be good. It'd be really good for a lot of authors to get legitimate feedback from people.
Yeah.
And there's almost always something good about a story.
Oh yeah.
But which Bob, I'm sure, will find it.
Even that Yi Yun Lee story that we didn't like. It was, I mean, the prose wasn't the problem. We both agreed that the prose was fine.
Yeah.
It was her plot choices that left a lot to be desired. But yeah, I mean, and that's like, I don't know. It's just.
And I think it would just be interesting to see, and it will make you appreciate the big hitters even more.
Exactly. Well, and it's like we mentioned Michael J. Sullivan earlier. You know, Rhaenyra Revelation, or I always get confused. It's Rhaenyra Revelations and Rhaenyra Chronicles. I don't know, whichever 6 books he wrote first, he self-published those.
Yeah.
Like, they were self-published books, and they sold like 90,000 copies or some ridiculous amount. Good. And because they were good. And so then, like, you know, someone came in and was like, oh, hey, bro, you're selling a lot.
Let me holla at you.
Let me holla at that, yeah. And so, like, and that's the thing, is like, who's to say that some, you know, if you might think, oh, God, I just don't know if the story's good enough or not. Well, just send it in, man, you know? We're not going to ask for any kind of weird, funky rights. I've done enough, like, submitting to places. We're not asking for anything. We just... Preferably, you will host it on your website, your story on your website, and we can just direct link to that. If not, we'll post it on our blog. But we're just going to ask for one-time publishing rights, online publishing rights. We're not going to try and steal your movie rights or anything. We're not Nazis here. But
we just want to read good stories.
We just want to read good stories, and we want to show other people good stories and have a conversation about it. One thing we also talked about in that recap was trying to make a concerted effort to being kind of like inclusive. And you're not going to read nothing but a bunch of stories by a bunch of old white guys on here. Preferably, you'll read a bunch of stories about this one young white guy on the podcast. Me. But we're trying to make a concerted effort to make sure that every voice gets heard. So,
although let's be real, don't really have to, because we weren't trying the first time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we weren't trying the first time, but
look, here's the thing: if you just go for the good stuff, you'll find diversity.
Exactly.
We're just looking for good stories.
We're looking for good stories.
I feel that was my impression. Yeah. It's like, man, we're looking for good stories. You're always going to find good stories from every walk of life.
Exactly. So that was, but we are going to. We're cognizant of that. I'd say we got lucky, but we. You know, it wasn't really luck.
It wasn't luck. We just went with the good stories.
Yeah, we went with the good stories. But like, it's going to be one of those deals. Like, we're going to make sure that you're getting a good variety of writers. Like right now, I'm reading N.K. Jemisin book, and it's fucking fabulous. Anyway, the other thing that we're going to try and do. I'm not exactly sure if I said this. I'm getting a little rambly, I know, but. So with every other week being a short read tall glass, the weeks in between are going to be somewhat of a hodgepodge. If we have like this week is somewhat of a hodgepodge because we're just talking about what's coming up. But typically it will probably be a book battle. We enjoy doing those. It's just if we can come up with good questions. That's the hardest part. If on a given week we can't come up with a good question, we do, which I have 3 sitting in the can right now. So we've got a little bit. But we're going to do some fun stuff, like whether it be like a deep dive on H.P. Lovecraft, or just I had a list of all my ideas, and of course it's in the other room. But I have a list of possible ideas of just fun things that we can talk about where it's not necessarily like we might just do like an episode like, oh well, you know, grimdark. If you want to read grimdark, here are some of the
Here
books
are
to
some
read.
of the ones that we've read that
Here's
that
kind of
we
the
like.
here's some of the authors. Here's what we thought about the books. Here's some good ones. Here's some bad ones. Fantasy of Manners, stuff like that.
Here's the thing: with us having a little bit more freedom and not doing such a structured production, I'm super excited about that because I just like talking about writing.
Yeah.
Like, period. Writing, reading, anything. I just want to run my mouth about it.
Yeah.
So, like, if we come up with like an interesting topic, then we can just talk about it.
Exactly.
We can. I was writing blog posts there for a while. It was anytime I just happened to think of something. For example, the idea of the reason that we're not specifically doing all of literature, that we're doing mostly genre fiction now, is because of what you said about what I consider academic snobbery.
Yeah.
And I feel like at some point I would like to have that conversation because I wrote an article about it and I feel very strongly about it. So at some point I would like to address it.
Yeah. No, that stuff like that. Like but
that kind of stuff is super fun for me.
It is, but we are super open to suggestions. If you have an idea that you think, like, we had someone, we had a friend of the podcast, wife, wanted us to do an episode on Gothic literature.
Yeah, which
we're down to do, but we just kind of wanted her to give us a little more, like, what are you looking for on that? So, like, we're definitely open to doing that. Just email us, bookspiritsbooze@gmail.com. And just let us know what you want us to talk about, and we will consider it. Another thing that we're really looking forward to, the main thing is we got to figure out this new recording method, get it hashed out fully. But doing some interviews. We've got one interview kind of thought out, lined up. Just got to confirm it with the guy. But also, one thing I'm really excited about is Superfan Tanya has some competition now. We have New Zealand brand ambassador Ryan has recently binged every one of our episodes.
That poor boy.
Right? And has been all in. Just like messaging me every day, talking about it. Suggestions, things like that. He is our New Zealand brand ambassador. He suggested the podcast he lives in New Zealand now, and he suggested the podcast to a friend down there. So he's our brand rep in New Zealand. So he's actually going to be coming back to America briefly.
Here soon, right?
Here soon. So I feel like to pay homage to our quickly growing New Zealand fan base, we will do an episode with him, similar to the bonus episode, the Bob's Birthday Bash, getting him to ask us a bunch of questions and make it into a drinking game.
That'll be fun. Oh, we should do that with Southern correspondent Shay too.
Yes, he has not been on the podcast. We haven't mentioned him on the podcast much, but if you pay attention to the comments on our Facebook page, Southern correspondent Shay is he's always quick to comment. Always good for a laugh. He's a good dude and longtime friend of both of us. So yeah, we're gonna work in some interviews. Ideally, we'd really like to
question sessions. Really, I mean,
stuff like that would be fun.
But talk about it, get their opinions on stuff.
Yeah, but also I would really like to at some point do an interview with an author.
Obviously, at some point,
someone Michael J. Sullivan. Someone, just someone, just no one in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got a lot of cool stuff lined up. Like I said, we've got at least one good interview lined up, one good bonus episode. And like I asked earlier, if you would like to hear more about liquor specifically, neither one of us know a ton about liquor, but
we like to drink it.
We love to drink it. I just drank a Larceny Mini while recording this, and it was delightful as always. But I know a guy. Pretty much, I know a guy for everything. But I know a guy who is a expert on is pretty much an expert on regional beers and liquors. Mm-hmm. So we can have him on here to talk. Just stuff like that. So let us know what you want to hear from us. The other thing is, last thing to talk about is Season 2 is going to run until the end of the year. Starting the first week of January, we are going to start season 3. And from that point on, God willing, and this podcast runs for years on end, every year will be a season. So season 1, short. Season 2, also short. But then season 3, they'll start being year-long seasons at that point. And we're toying with some ideas on how we want to do the story structure for that, like how we select the stories and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the main thing is we want to hear from you. We can run our mouths about fucking anything.
Oh, yeah.
Really. Like, especially if you give us a week to fucking prepare, we can fucking run our mouth forever.
Yeah, you give me more than a week, then I'm going to...
Yeah. So we definitely want to hear from you. Let us know what you are most looking forward to in season 2, like what kind of things you want us to talk about, if you have ideas for specific episodes, things like that. We're here for you. There's no point in us doing this if not for y'all. So we want to bring y'all what you want to hear. Have I missed anything on what we're doing for season 2?
I mean, other than that, a lot of the things that you guys already know and like will still be there.
Oh,
Me being right, Bob being wrong,
Shit.
that kind of stuff. I mean, that's not going anywhere.
You're always going to get your news. Every other week, you're going to get a good story to read, and hopefully some good discussion from us. And then the alternating weeks, probably a book battle. If not, it's going to be some sort of interesting topic.
Discussion topic.
Yeah. You'll get to hear us argue about something. So, but yeah, you please reach out to us. Contact us at booksbeardsbooze@gmail.com. That's booksbeardsbooze, that's S's, not Z's, @gmail.com. And if you search anything Tales by Bob, I crop up. And if you message that, it'll get to me. And also, like, if you got a second, leave us a review on iTunes. If you're listening to us on iTunes, we'd love a star or 5, I think is what we're looking for, 5 stars. So if you could, we've got a couple reviews on there, but not enough yet for it to show. Like, I've had a couple folks tell me that they reviewed it, but it's not enough yet for the ranking to show. So if you could take some time and just go on iTunes and leave us a couple stars, we would greatly appreciate it. Oh, I forgot to say this. We're going to have some contests. We got some cool ideas for some contests with some cool prizes. As your reward for listening to this, I will go ahead and tell you one of those prizes is going to be a...
high five from me.
That, if you find him. But it's going to be sealed, still in the wrapper, brand fucking new Mistborn trilogy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of our prizes coming up in the next month or two. So, like, I'm cruising Amazon for the deals, and y'all will reap the benefit of that. And so there will be a contest coming up where, for some virtually non-existent, it's so easy task, like just commenting or something, you will be entered in to win a trilogy of books. I will pay to ship to you.
Or for a review.
Yeah, or for that's probably what we should do, is just like leave us a review somewhere. But yeah. So anyway, you got that to look forward to. As I sign off, as usual, we challenge you to, as in the coming week, to go forth and grow a great beard.